Before we begin, take 1 second to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. This channel is for the stories people carry silently. The stories hidden behind tired smiles, late-night arguments, unanswered phone calls, and the moments that change everything without warning. Every week I share emotional, true-style stories about love betrayal, family heartbreak, and the painful truths that most people never talk about out loud. So if you believe stories can heal, if you believe the smallest moments can leave the deepest scars, then you're in the right place. Now settle in, because tonight's story is not just about a broken marriage. It's about the moment a son looked at his stepmother and finally told her the truth. His father spent years hiding, and by the time the sun came up the next morning, none of our lives would ever be the same again. My name is Emily Carter, and this is what really happened. It started on a Friday night that felt painfully ordinary. The kind of night you forget almost as soon as it happens. The dishwasher hummed softly in the kitchen, while rain tapped against the windows in slow, uneven rhythms. The living room lamp cast a warm amber glow across the hardwood floor, and the whole house smelled faintly of lavender cleaner and the tomato soup I'd made earlier that evening. Everything looked peaceful, but sometimes peace is just silence waiting to break. I stood at the kitchen counter drying the last wine glass from dinner, listening to the quiet, not the comforting kind of quiet. The heavy kind, the kind that presses against your chest, when a house no longer feels alive. I glanced at the microwave clock. 10:47 p.m. Tom still wasn't home again. 5 years earlier, that would have worried me. 3 years earlier, I would have texted him. 1 year earlier, I would have cried. But that night, I just stared at the clock and felt tired. There's a certain loneliness that only married people understand. A loneliness that comes from lying beside someone every night, while slowly realizing they stopped emotionally coming home long ago. That was our marriage now schedules excuses. Polite conversations and silence. Lots of silence. I folded the dish towel carefully and hung it over the oven handle. I remember doing that specifically because I wanted to delay going upstairs. I didn't want to lie in bed staring at the ceiling, waiting for headlights to pull into the driveway again. Then I heard the front door rattle. For half a second, relief rushed through me automatically. Tom's home, but the feeling disappeared the moment the door opened. Because the person stumbling inside wasn't my husband. It was Jake, my stepson. Barely managed to close the door behind him, before leaning heavily against it. His breathing was uneven. His hoodie was soaked from the rain. And even from across the room, I could smell the alcohol strong. Sharp, messy. Not the smell of someone who had a few drinks with friends. The smell of someone trying desperately not to feel something. "Jake," I said, quickly moving toward him. He lifted his head slowly. His eyes were bloodshot, not just drunk exhausted. Broken, and underneath the alcohol was something worse: pain. "Real pain, hey?" I said gently, "Are you okay?" He laughed quietly, but there was nothing amused about it. "You ever realize your whole life is built on a lie?" He muttered. My stomach tightened instantly. At first I thought maybe he was talking about college, or a breakup or something with friends. But then he looked directly at me and I felt it immediately. That horrible instinct deep in your chest that whispers, something is very wrong. Jake had always been quiet, but this felt different. This felt like someone carrying something too heavy for too long. He pushed himself off the door and stumbled into the living room. I followed carefully, while he dropped onto the couch and rubbed both hands over his face. "I shouldn't have come home," he whispered. "Jake, talk to me." He shook his head immediately. No. "No, because if I say it out loud," his voice cracked, "then it becomes real." A cold feeling spread through me. Outside, thunder rolled softly in the distance. The house suddenly felt smaller somehow. "What happened?" I asked quietly. Jake stared at the floor for several seconds before speaking. Dad's lying to you. The words landed harder than they should have. Not because they shocked me, but because some part of me had already known. You don't spend months sleeping beside someone emotionally absent without feeling the shift. You notice the changes even when you pretend not to. The late nights, the secret of phone calls. The sudden protectiveness over his phone. The way he stopped looking at me when we talked. The way affection became routine instead of real. But suspicion and confirmation are two completely different things. One lives in your mind, the other tears through your life. I sat down slowly across from him. What do you mean? Jake swallowed hard. He's cheating on you. The room went silent, truly silent. Like the entire world paused just long enough for my heart to break quietly inside my chest. I stared at him, waiting for him to take it back. To laugh awkwardly, to tell me he misunderstood something. Instead, he looked devastated. I found out months ago. He whispered months. That word hurt more than anything else. Months. Everyone always says betrayal hurts because of the lie. But that isn't true. Betrayal hurts because while you were loving someone honestly, they were making decisions behind your back the entire time. And somehow still coming home pretending everything was normal. I tried to steady my breathing. How do you know? Jake leaned forward. Elbows on his knees, I saw him. His voice sounded hollow now. First time was near campus. He told you he had business meetings. In the city, remember? I nodded slowly. He wasn't in meetings. The rain outside grew heavier. Jake continued staring at the floor while speaking. He was with a woman. They were at a restaurant together. At first I thought maybe it was work or something. But then I saw them holding hands. Every muscle in my body tightened. He kissed her before they left. I closed my eyes and suddenly, every strange feeling from the past year came rushing back. All at once, the distance. The excuses, the coldness. The perfume I pretended not to notice. The nights he rolled away from me in bed. The empty conversations. The emotional absence, all the tiny fractures I kept painting over. Because I wanted so badly to believe my marriage was still alive. Jay kept talking quietly. I wanted to tell you before. Why didn't you? His eyes filled instantly. Because he's my dad. That answer shattered me in a completely different way. Because I finally understood what had been eating him alive. Loyalty that impossible. Painful loyalty children feel toward parents, even when those parents hurt people. Jake had been trapped between protecting his father and protecting me. And neither choice would leave him guiltless. I confronted him 2 weeks ago. Jake admitted. I looked up sharply. You what? He got angry. Jake laughed bitterly, not guilty, angry. What did he say? Jake wiped his face roughly. He told me to stay out of his marriage. Marriage, funny how people suddenly call it their marriage once they start destroying it. What else? I whispered. Jake hesitated. Then he finally looked me directly in the eyes. He said you were emotionally draining him. I physically flinched, not because I believed it, but because after loving someone deeply, even their cruelest lies still know exactly where to cut. Jake immediately shook his head. I didn't believe him, but I barely heard him. Emotionally draining. I thought about all the nights I waited awake for him. All the dinners reheated twice. All the conversations where I begged gently for honesty. Instead of conflict, all the moments I blamed myself for our distance. And suddenly I realized something horrifying. Tom hadn't just been cheating. He had been rewriting our marriage in his head. So he could live with himself. People do that. Sometimes they turn loyal people into villains. Because guilt is easier to carry. When you convince yourself your betrayal was justified. Jake's voice pulled me back. She's not new what? The woman. He swallowed hard. It's been going on for at least a year. A year I felt nauseous. An entire year of lies, an entire year of sleeping beside me, while building another relationship behind my back. I stood suddenly and walked toward the kitchen, because I thought I might collapse if I stayed still. My hands trembled as I gripped the counter. The worst part wasn't even the affair itself. It was realizing how many moments had been fake. Anniversaries, date nights, family dinners, conversations, vacations. Every memory suddenly felt contaminated. Behind me, Jake spoke softly. I am sorry. I turned toward him, and for the first time that night, I stopped thinking about myself, because Jake looked destroyed, not guilty destroyed. Like exposing the truth had cost him something enormous. And it had people forget. Affairs don't only damage marriages. They damage children too, even adult children, because once you see your parent clearly, you can never completely unsee it. I sat beside him carefully. This isn't your fault. His jaw tightened instantly. You don't understand, then help me understand. Jake stared ahead silently for a long moment. Then he whispered something that made my blood run cold. He brought her to my graduation. I blinked. What? He introduced her as a coworker. My heart pounded harder. You were there. Jake said quietly. You remember that blonde woman Dad kept talking to near the parking lot, and suddenly I did remember. Tall blonde cream-colored dress. Pretty smile. Tom had acted strangely. Nervous that afternoon at the time. I ignored it because that's what people in love do when they're afraid. We ignore the truth in order to keep the life we recognize. Oh my God, I whispered. Jake nodded painfully. She knew about you. That sentence hit differently. Because affairs always feel uglier when the other person knows. When they smile at you politely, shake your hand, look you in the eyes while helping destroy your life behind the scenes. I felt physically sick. The front windows rattled softly as wind pushed rain against the house. Then Jake said the sentence that changed everything. She's not the first one. I turned slowly. What did you say? He looked ashamed now. Like even speaking the words dishonored him somehow. I found messages on his laptop months ago. He admitted different women. Different dates. I stared at him in disbelief. No, he's been doing this for years. Years, not one mistake. Not one affair, a pattern. Suddenly my marriage didn't feel broken. It felt fictional, like I had spent years loving a version of a man that never truly existed. And the scariest part, I still loved him even then. Even sitting there with my entire world collapsing around me. Part of me still wanted him to walk through the door and explain everything away. That's the cruel thing about love. Sometimes the heart refuses to catch up to reality. Jake stood unsteadily. I should go upstairs. Jake. I can't do this anymore tonight. He paused halfway toward the stairs, then quietly added, You deserve better than him. And for some reason, that was the sentence that finally made me cry. Not the cheating, not the lies. Not the humiliation, it was hearing kindness. In a house that had slowly become emotionally starved. Jake disappeared upstairs while I sat alone in the dim living room, listening to the storm outside. And somewhere around midnight, my husband finally came home. The headlights swept across the windows first. Then the engine shut off, then silence. I heard his footsteps approach the front door. My entire body stiffened for years. Hearing Tom come home used to comfort me. That night, it felt like hearing a stranger entering my house. The lock clicked, the door opened, and there he was, completely unaware that his entire life was seconds away from unraveling. He looked tired. His coat was damp from rain. There was the faint smell of whiskey on his clothes, and something floral beneath it. Not my perfume, never mind. He looked up and froze when he saw me awake Emily. He said carefully, "Why are you still up?" Funny how quickly ordinary questions become unbearable after betrayal. I stood slowly and for the first time in years. I looked at my husband without protecting him in my mind. No excuses, no denial. No Emma used channel editing. Just truth. Jake came home. Something flickered across his face instantly. Fear gone almost immediately. But I saw it. And once you see fear in a liar's eyes, you start realizing how many times you missed it before. Tom set his keys down too casually. "He okay?" I stared directly at him. He told me everything. And just like that, the mask finally cracked.